Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Meet Me in Napa. I'm your host, Jeremy Jackson. Glad you are joining me. Thank you for all the support and love you've been giving me through our episodes and feedback. I'm just so excited to continue to bring this content and to continue to bring you special guests and special people from the Valley who are doing remarkable things out here. I have a guest here today, Michael Cuff from Napa Valley Creative Agency.
Look at it.
CEO.
You nailed it. That was so good.
Yeah.
We had a little discussion before whether or not we were. It's a long title.
It is.
And so I say it's NVCA or Napa Valley Creative Agency.
Okay.
I have to remember it myself sometimes. So it's, it could be shorter, but it is what it is. So,
well, thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I always start off by telling people at the end, I always tell people you guys are my most important guests because you guys are the ones who came off after a phone call and just said, yes, I'll support you, and came and sat down, set a date. And so I'm just thankful that you're investing in me, investing in this. And
I appreciate you. You're a member of our community. A lot of people know you, and I appreciate that you're creating a voice for everybody here.
Yeah.
Creative energy in our Napa Valley is awesome.
It is.
It's good that I think we have this kind of fun little energy happening here that's getting bigger throughout time. So I appreciate you doing what you do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Keep rocking it.
Yeah, I will. So let's get into it. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Tell us about your journey, your humble beginnings, and
sure.
Who is Michael? Who is Michael?
Well, that is a question.
Michael Cuff, because there's a lot of famous Michaels. But who is Michael Cuff?
There's a lot of Michael Cuffs too. I'm glad I own the domain.
You ever Googled your own name before?
Oh, all the time.
Yeah, I'm like, there's so many Jeremy Jacksons. The one from Baywatch. The guy, remember Baywatch? There was I remember.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Michael Cuffs. There is a range of Michael Cuffs. There is I own michaelcuff.com and mikecuff.com. I bought those years ago. Thank goodness, because there's Michael Cuff. He's a really famous cardiologist in the country. I think he's I don't want to speak out. I think he's from Duke or something. Anyway, there's him, and then there's another Michael Cuff who is a Jamaican broadcaster. He's a radio host, but he was married to a woman named Tesson Chin, I believe. I might be screwing up her name, but she was on The Voice years ago, and they were kind of like a couple on there, and then his name blew up, and I was like, of course I Google my name all the time because I don't know what that says about me. I'm just honest.
You trying to find out if you're famous yet?
Everybody.
Did I make it yet?
Yeah.
You're not famous until your face is the first one that pops up when you type it in.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of me on when you look for me, but it was that thing of like years ago. I was like, who is this guy popping into my feed? And it's funny. We've all talked to one another at one point or another. Oh, there's another famous Michael. There's another well-known Michael Cuff. He was I forget. He was like the vice president or CEO of Dairy Queen. And ironically, years ago, I knew this. This was probably, this is a random story, but about 10 years ago, I was with probably longer than that. It was probably 15, 20 years ago or so. I was in Las Vegas, and I just happened to know that there was this guy named Michael Cuff who worked for Dairy Queen, and I love Dairy Queen. I grew up, I'm a Midwestern boy at the end of the day. And so, I was at like the Venetian in Las Vegas, and a package was delivered to my room, and it was to Michael Cuff, and it was like in my room, and so I was like, well, this isn't my package, and I realized there was like an ice cream convention downstairs, and I ended up. This is so random. Probably shouldn't even be talking about this, but anyway, long story short, I ended up. I brought it down to the convention. I found him and I gave it to him. Yeah. And I was like, it's the internet. See, how else would I know that?
Yeah.
So, that's the world of Michael Cuff.
Did he give you tickets to the convention?
No.
Man. Come on, Mike.
I didn't even get a peanut butter parfait or anything out of it. So it was like, it's definitely so my background is I grew up in Minnesota and Chicago, so that's why I've told you before of like at the end of the day I'm kind of like, oh hey, how you doing? I have a very like Minnesota background. I was raised in a pretty cool place and grew up on a lake. We didn't have a lot of money growing up, but we were we had the outdoors and the lake, and it was just a very healthy, good environment. And then lived in the Chicago area for some time and wanted to, ever since I've been a kid, I've been a photographer and a videographer. I've grown up with a camera in my hand, and my mother was really awesome at, we didn't have a lot of money, but we had one of those giant VHS cameras, the one where you put
put on your shoulder. Yeah.
Yeah, one of those. You put out the whole thing. So there's lots of pictures of me as a kid, like carrying around this, it was expensive back then too. And she was just like, use it. And then the cameras was the same way. So I really grew up. There's this photographer gene in our family. My great uncle was a photographer in LaSalle, Peru, Illinois, which is this little farm town. And his name was Chip, and I never got to know him, but he was a big photographer and was the photographer in town. And then my grandfather was, he was a sheet metal construction guy, but he was an obsessive photographer. And so there's this gene, my mom too, she likes to take photos. So it's, there's this gene in our family, this obsession. I realize photographers are like people who just try to capture the now. It's like an obsession. It's a weird obsession. So
do you have any of those old photos still?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I like actually go out and collect photos and find photos, and I go to antique stores and look for old photos because they're starting to be collectible, especially like stuff at turn of the century. Like I found some, I'm always looking for like old Napa stuff, because usually if you find something from the turn of the century or something, it's the only record of it. It'll be like one, so yeah. And the photography is just, it's in my blood, and that kind of led me to a career in what I do now, which is, film and I shoot things and take pictures, do video, and then it's led me into a life of just marketing in general.
So you were in Minnesota, then you went to Chicago. What was the age ranges from Minnesota to Chicago? Were
Minnesota,
you
I was
adult or?
Yeah, I was about 14 when we moved to Chicago area.
Okay.
And that was kind of a big culture shift because this is like me talking like Minnesota, Chicago. I was still in the suburbs of Chicago. So listen, Chicago's got a range. To be respectful.
Most big cities have a range, yeah.
To be respectful to my friends who grew up in the inner city of Chicago, that's just, I grew up in the suburbs. I went to Algonquin High School, which is it's probably about 40 miles outside of Chicago. But it was still like, I always put it this way. When we moved to Chicago, I had grown up on a place where in Minnesota, we always like lived on a lake. And really we lived in lake communities where people didn't have a lot of money. They used to be old like cabin communities. And so, I mean, it's super normal for everybody to have 5 cars in their driveway that were rusted out. And that's why I grew up.
Yeah.
And then Chicago was like, we were literally had moved to a place. Now we're living in a newish built house, which what was a cornfield like literally years before, and now I remember my window, it looked out on a cornfield across the street, and I always felt like we were at that time at the very western expansion of the Chicago suburbs. And so but I think that the reason I bring all that up, because when my father had gotten a new job out in California with JD Power and Associates. You've seen them on the news, on TV with car ads and stuff, in Thousand Oaks, Westlake, California, which is a northern suburb of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I know where Thousand Oaks is.
Yeah, it's a very very affluent community. And so I always tell people I went from a place where you're lucky to drive a car to school, like your old beat up whatever to school, to a place where like everybody's driving a BMW or a Mercedes. And it was just a massive culture shift for me from that transition. And that happened my junior year of high school. But all of that played into my, when I remember I had the ability to stay in Chicago at that time with some friends, because it was junior to senior year. And it was such a life decision. I probably could have ended up staying there. I had college set up in Illinois. And then, I remember looking out at the cornfield across the street from my house, like out my window. And I was like, okay, you want to be in like Hollywood, and your family's moving to Hollywood. So like, what are you doing? And that made my decision. So then when I got to then all of a sudden here I am in Westlake Village, California, going to Westlake High School, and but I met so many people. Everybody's friends and parents worked in the entertainment industry. So my me going there at that time was a very it was a big. I'm so glad I did it because I connected with so many industry professionals at that time that really set me up for Hollywood in general and LA in general during my time there. So
just organically, it was like your background with your family and just your love for photography and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then it's like your dad happens to get a job
Yep.
out there in LA, and it's like, well, that's the land of
opportunity.
Opportunity,
and
plus the industry of photography and filmography and all those things. So you get out there. And what was your next step into the industry once you were out there?
Well, I'll backtrack a little bit. Part of what caused me to get out there is when I was young, I was obsessed with comedy, and I still am. Who's
your favorite like comedians?
Comedians.
Who's your favorite?
Oh man! Well, right now it's the Bill Burrs, and
I love Bill Burr.
I mean, Bill Burr.
I saw him.
He's speaking the truth right now.
I saw him. And he came out to Sacramento to the Hard Rock out there.
Oh yeah,
and we went out there. Man, he's funny. But I think he's right up. Well, I'll let you go. But like to me, he's like it's like Chappelle, Bill Burr. They're all in that. They're all in that same. Yeah, I don't.
No, they're all. You have them. The Louis C.K.'s. The who else has been canceled? Let's see here.
All right.
Yeah. Who else?
I love all the canceled.
Who else should I say that I follow? No, but you know what I mean. It's like one of those. I think that's changing too. But it's people who are. I'm very big about. Stand up is an art. It's and these are usually the biggest truth speakers, and it's not easy to go out there and say that stuff. They say stuff that a lot of us can't say in normal life. Or
I would say it, but I'm just starting a podcast. I don't want to get canceled in my first season. Right?
That's why I'm like, I listen to these people. And then the thing is, like, I think too, I very much through life have had this whole thing of like, I agree with some of what some people say. And I think that's the biggest thing with like life and society right now is it's like, you're not going to always agree with everything that, you and I can talk about a range of topics. Right. There's going to be things we're not going to agree on. That's just, we're humans. That's what makes us our special little snowflakes. Yeah. So,
what I wanted to know was when you were a kid, who did you look up to comedy wise? Like who was your favorite?
Well, when I was a kid,
your teenage years.
Yeah. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with of course, Robin Williams was huge for me.
The GOAT, one of the GOATs.
But then Richard Pryor, Eddie Murphy. Let's see. And then I went all the way back to the very, I'm trying to remember some of the very old names from the 50s. I mean, he goes back to the Marx Brothers. And I mean, I love comedians and comics and people who make people laugh.
Yeah.
And because at the end of the day, they tend to George Carlin, of course. George Carlin's a legend.
George Carlin's a legend. Yes.
And I thankfully was able to see him before he passed away. That was the thing about me is I was a young kid who was obsessed to when I would go to Las Vegas, I would catch afternoon shows of George Carlin or somebody like that, because I really have always been really big about people who are these professional orators. And that's what they are. And I think it feels good. I think comedy feels good because it's a release of what the things that everybody's thinking, but we can't always say.
And that's the thing. It's always been that space that's the space where you can say the things you quote unquote can't say in other spaces, but we all know it's true. Right?
Yes.
Right. Even if agree or disagree, you know it's true, right?
Yeah. I mean, I say stuff all the time to my wife, and she's like, "You really shouldn't say that anywhere." But inside here, and probably not even with me sometimes. So, but she's great. She's a great. But yeah, no. And so when I was in Chicago, the reason I bring all that up is I was a young kid. I was obsessed with improv comedy at that time, and so I was at the Second City doing some stuff. They had some training programs and some classes for young people doing improv comedy at that time. My dad was then working with some Second City doing some corporate stuff with them. So I kind of had this thing where I was around it a lot. Tina Fey was there and Rachel Dratch were there. I was obsessed with both of them. They were just some of the Scott Adsit, I think Richard Dorn or Dorf. All these amazing comics were there at that time, who then moved on. Basically, a lot of the 30 Rock cast was that Second City cast at that time. But I was doing stuff there. I really wanted to stay doing improv and stuff, in Chicago. I was just getting started in all of that at the Second City and some of the training programs they had for young people there. And they're like the head of the training program, or the head of Second City at that time, I forget who was running it. My dad knew him, and my dad was trying to convince me to come out to California with him, because I had a setup. was able to live that. Like, I had a friend whose dad was it sounds like I have all these connections back. I was really just like this Midwestern kid with action figures on his wall, and like I was just a kid still. But I had this setup. I wanted to stay in Chicago. I had a very strong community there that I was a part of, and the head of Second City, like, we went out to lunch one day, and he said, I'll set you up. We'll if you want to know about all that, if you want to get into this, you're going to move out to LA eventually, kid. So, like, don't feel like you're like missing out by staying in Chicago here. So that was another thing. I wanted to be in film and television, and then I was getting into like comedy. I wanted to do comedy too. And so it's like, it's here, Hollywood, here I come. It's like, what are you doing out in Chicago? Like, I mean, Chicago, as great as it is still not LA. And so they set me up with some the people who set up Second City, etc., which was the Jeff and Jane Michalski. I always forget how to say Jeff's last name. It's a nice Polish name. And they started Second City, etc., in Chicago. But immediately they had a little theater in Los Angeles at that time called the Improv Underground, run by a woman named Liz Hooker. And they all kind of took me under their wing when I was there. And I was a very young guy. I mean, I was 18, and everybody else was, a hustling young actor or something. So everybody was always in their mid-20s and older. They all felt like huge adults. Yeah. But it was at that time all of a sudden I was a Chicago kid who was like excited to see the local weather reporter, to now I'm actually getting to perform on stage with, like, at that time, Whose Line Is It Anyway was massive on television.
I remember that show. Yeah,
Ryan Stiles and a lot of that crew. They're all friends, with Jeff and Jane. They all grew up they have all worked together. So I got to meet all those people and got to perform with all those people. And
so you were actually doing stand-up?
I was doing improv at that time.
Improv, okay.
And then when I was in high school there, another funny thing about stand-up is that since the industry is so connected around Los Angeles, it's different now. It's changed so dramatically. Yeah. But like when I was in high school, I had met, I'm friends with Bruce Willis's niece. Now, mind you, I'm a Midwestern kid, so all of this was like
amazing,
so crazy. But it sounds like I don't mean to be so name droppy, but living in Napa, it's like everybody knows everybody here. I mean, the Mandavis and the name, there's all the names here, and everybody kind of knows the kids or and so. It's this thing of like, LA's the same thing. I always have told people it's just an industry. It's just a place. And so you meet if you move to LA, you're going to know a lot of people. It's just at the end of time, it's a big town, but it's a small town.
Everything gets smaller once you get there. It seems so big, but you're like,
well, especially if you get involved in the industry, you get to know a lot of people real quick. And so, when I was really close friends with Bruce Willis's niece, got to know her mom and dad, and her mom is, of course, Bruce's sister, and then their close family. Bruce's mom, her name is Marlena, and she's infamous. This woman, Marlena, Marlena Willis. She's a character, and she was dear close friends with Bud and Alex Friedman. Well, Bud Friedman was the guy who started the improv comedy clubs technically the first comedy club in New York City was the Improv. Okay. And so Bud created that. So whenever you see like the Improv Irvine or the Improv wherever, that's all Bud's creation. And he knew everybody. And so it was like, so here, cut back to Midwestern kid meeting them. Oh, you should meet this. That they introduced me as, you should meet Michael. They were at my high school graduation. You should meet Michael. So then I was doing improv down in Santa Monica with Jeff and Jane, and then the Second City, this was a couple of years later, was opening, or a year later or 2 years later, was opening up their LA location right next to the improv part, actually adjoining theater to the improv on Melrose. And so now all of a sudden I went from like, talk about a kid who went from like local weather reporter to now I'm getting to I'm not only doing improv comedy on stage every weekend. I was doing like 4 to 5 shows a weekend. Mm-hmm. And mind you, I was still going to college throughout all of this. So it was I was weighing a lot.
Juggling act. Yeah.
And then I would go next door afterwards, and I had free reign to go between there, and I'd go, literally they were adjoining. It was like a wall. Mm-hmm. It was the same building, and I would go next door, and Bud and Alex were so genuinely kind to me through the whole. They were just nice people to me, and I kind of got in through that weird family aspect of knowing people who they liked, and they saw me as this young kid. And anyway, I can't say enough about them because Bud. There was a table when you walked into the improv to the right-hand side up a few steps, and there was a bottle of champagne there, and Bud and Alex would be sitting there on Saturday or Friday nights, and they'd always be like, Michael, and every single time I walked in, I'd come and here I am, this young kid sitting down, drinking champagne. It was like whoever the headliner was for the night. So I met so many people.
Yeah.
Sarah Silverman was on stage every night at that time. I was good friends personally with, and still am, with a comic named Rick Overton, who's a really, really well-known comic for 40 years now. He's like best friends with Robin Williams. And so really just got integrated into that with the world of comedians, and just had such a cool experience. I mean, late at night, hanging out in the improv, everything's closed, and George Wallace is there, and just all these like.
I can imagine the stories and the and the conversations back then.
Well,
pre-cancel culture,
dude, it was awesome actually. Yeah, I mean, when you watch stand-ups night after, and I was in it for the art of it, so you watch stand-ups night after night after night after night after night, get up and you watch them run their material. Bill Maher was there all the time, and watching them run their material, and everybody, the range of people, and watching their off nights, and watching a comic get up there. I mean, I watched one guy get up there one night, and he like laid into the crowd, like immediately was like, got up on stage and was like, F you and F you, like just had a total breakdown on stage. And it was like silent. And I was like, it was just, you saw everything happen. And I think that's the thing about improv. I mean, comedy in general these days is so different with it blowing up on podcasts. But yeah, it was a really, really cool experience. But the other side of it, like you bring attention to, I saw the other side of it too. I saw a bunch of, so mind you, I'm going through college at this time. Was in community college, Moore Park Community College. Give a shout out to Moore Park. Anyway, went to Moore Park Community College to save some money, and then I went to Loyola Marymount.
Okay.
That one I think I just paid off. But that Loyola Marymount was basically had a nice. They had a film program at that time, and so I was doing like basically independent films throughout the week, and those that took my whole life up. So there reached a breaking point where I couldn't do the comedy as much because I was doing the film. And the reason I started to take the film more and more seriously is because I started to understand the industry, and I started to see all these actors I knew and all these comedians. And at that time, you have to think, this is the early 2000s, right? So it's very much Hollywood.
Yeah.
This is primetime Weinstein years, primetime, it's like old school Hollywood, and it's not easy to get work. It's a hustle. And so I saw these people I knew, and I started to really understand that, like, here's this person I see as famous,
right?
But they're hustling.
Yeah.
They have a sitcom job. They maybe make some money. And so I really started to understand the industry.
Like, they're famous, but they don't really have money.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just public notoriety, basically. Yeah.
And that's most of Los Angeles. And that's where you start to have an appreciation or a love for the the film industry is that to make movies and to be in the entertainment industry, it's a hustle, it's a lot of work, and I don't think people understand that aspect of it. But when I was a young kid, hanging out with comics late at night, getting to be in these very intimate settings, then sometimes going over people's houses, then knowing, oh, they're not booking anything, they're hustling, they're going up for, oh, I might get this gig, I may not get this gig. I kept thinking, well, you better stay up with the film production side of things, kid, because it looks a little rough out there.
Yeah.
And then I kind of got on this thing of like, if I'm gonna be in this world, I'll just make my own thing someday and I'll throw myself in my own stuff someday. And so that's how I kind of. It's funny, even in the production side, as a kid being a photographer, videographer, I thought I was going to be like a DP or director of photography or a director or go in that direction. And I really got into the production management side of things, because that's the person who like organizes everything and puts everybody together. And so that's how I just slowly moved over. Frankly, what happened is I was doing like 5 shows a weekend at the Second City in Los Angeles, and I was doing other theater venues throughout LA, and I was starting to play around with stand-up a bit at that time. And I feel like I threw away a giant opportunity there, because Bud Friedman was always like, get up on stage. You go up there anytime you want. You can get up. And I was like, now I look back, I was like, dude, you were handed the opportunity of a lifetime.
Man.
And, but life takes you certain ways and stuff. But I got more and more into the production. Then I got a job at Paramount, and that was a whole journey in itself. And then I really got to see Hollywood. Like, I got to see Hollywood. And
what's that? What's Hollywood?
Hollywood is me smoking cigarettes at 24 years old, 25 years old, walking around studio lots going like, is this my dream?
Yeah.
Is this what it's all about?
Yeah.
And it
second guessing yourself?
Oh, 1,000%. 12-hour days,
Yeah.
just stupid, crazy personalities. Like I brought up, these were the Weinstein years.
Yeah.
That
now, if you want to take this podcast through the roof, you can tell some of those stories.
Well, I'll tell you something. I will tell you. I'll tell you some stuff. The stuff about like Kevin Spacey, that was well known of at that time. Like that was well known of, like Kevin Spacey, like on set, and him being a little touchy and
I watched that documentary and I was like,
yeah,
it was unfortunate. I think it's unfortunate because
he's an amazing actor. There's no doubt.
I mean,
he's an amazing actor.
I like they say, you separate the art from the person, because I tell people that all the time. Like, if I had to, right now we're going through something like drive a particular car that somebody owns, right?
Yep.
If I had to wear only clothes that I had to make sure they were all socially correct and agree with it. We'd be out here naked and couldn't enjoy anything, right? Because we're very complex, and horrible people can create very great things, right?
In fact, very horrible people create great things all the time.
Yeah, some of the best things, right?
Some of the best things.
And I love like I think we were talking about Gary Vee. One thing I love about his platform is that he was like, getting rid of the whole, you got to be an asshole, you got to be this, like, no, be a good person. Like, you can be a good person, like, because I think that's in Hollywood, it was kind of known, right? Like, they're all assholes, they were this, and they knew stories that they weren't allowed to talk about back then, which are now being told over the last probably about 5 to 7 years,
right?
Which kind of cracked with the Me Too movement,
right? Yeah,
but
and all justifiable too.
Yeah, you guys know
horrible.
it, right? You guys know it, but now people are able to talk about it. But good people should start doing, creating good things too, because it's like, like I love the Cosby Show. I'm gonna, if it's on TV, I'm gonna watch it. You know what I mean? Like I
he was a great he was a great comic.
He was a great He was a great at his craft, right?
He was great at what
he did. And he used his, like many of people done some horrible things, right? And so, yeah, I don't know where do we live on Earth if everyone has to be, this without fault. He who is without sin cast the first stone kind of thing.
Well, it's even things like the Cosby thing, like in the comedian world, even when I was young then.
Yeah.
Because here I am, this bright-eyed kid from Chicago, and I start hearing those stories about things because I was in the industry. Now I'm around people who know the situation, and I remember bringing up Bill Cosby and stuff because I grew up listening to Cosby's albums. I mean, I really used to digest all comedy.
Yeah, Richard, like my uncles and they used to play the records and stuff
Yeah,
like that.
I mean, they're famous. He's amazing at storytelling, and and then you have your Richard Pryor, and then you have your Eddie Murphy, and they all are this trajectory of like storytelling. And then, but it was, and then, so LA at that time was like, like Weinstein. I heard about him. I heard there was always things. I remember being in the studio system, and then, I was around like, I remember found myself in a studio, in the head of the studio's office one day. I was delivering something, or I was just standing. I was kind of in this place where I'm in the head of the studio's office, and I remember Morgan Freeman was on the call, and Morgan Freeman was at his peak at that point, and he was like, if I can maybe get on this job, it would be really great if we could. And I was listening to Morgan Freeman, like kind of hustling to get on a project and stuff. And I was like, damn, even Morgan Freeman is hustling. So it was like that's why what I get back to of like, here I am, I was digesting all of this information. It's like, I always say
you were
this,
just a sponge at the time.
Yeah, and you're like this thing of like, I always tell people, never work at Disneyland. If you like Disneyland, you don't want to see what's behind the scenes. And that's like what Hollywood is I have so much appreciation for it, because from a creative industry, the amount of people that are in it, and are super passionate about it. It's a working industry. It's some very nuts and bolts at the end of the day. It's almost like, I come from a family that's like hardcore blue collar construction and stuff. And, I don't think it's any different than that. So much of it was lighting and rigging, especially at that time. It's scaled down quite a bit, but, I was getting all this information. I remember being like, I'd say something like, I really like, da-da-da, and they'd be like, well, you really shouldn't like him, because he's kind of an asshole, and he does this and that. And that's like how I heard about like the spacey things. And I mean, we're talking about the space, when all the Me Too stuff happened. I won't even name names, because there are still things out there. There are still certain people that are like,
don't get me canceled.
I'm not gonna blow this up with some, but there's still people out there who they were notorious for doing things. And if you live in LA, there's like, everybody knows there's people down. It's just like, it's kind of knowing the gossip to Napa. Napa's got the same stuff.
There's gossip.
This valley is hilarious. It's like, and that's the funny thing is, like, I've had my moments in LA like that, and then I've been in the art community as well, the contemporary art community, and now I'm in Napa and wine and stuff and tourism, and it's hilarious, because no matter what industry it is, they're all kind of this. People are people at the end of the day, and there's good people and bad people. But to get back to what you were saying earlier, I really feel, I'm hoping we're entering into a time in life where I genuinely try to go through my life putting myself out. I try to be genuine and kind to everybody I interact with. I really try to do that. No, I have a good, the two angels on both sides of me, the one who's, bitches and complains about things, and then the good old Catholic boy that's somewhere there who's like, you really shouldn't do that. I mean, I'm so bipolar with that, so I think we all are. But that's life.
So not to interrupt, but just kind of getting back to like the journey part. So you were at Hollywood. How did you get into, begin to talk about that, because you were photographing, taking pictures, but you weren't necessarily doing that in LA. So how did you get back into the contemporary? You were telling me earlier about the contemporary art side. How did that journey transition?
So I was LA production, burned out with production. There was a series of independent film. I left Paramount, left this. I had done a number of other things for some other producers and stuff, and boy, those people, producers at the end of the day, what's a producer? A producer in Hollywood is someone who has money, who generally wants to get into the film industry if it's at like, especially the startup level of like, so when I had some studio experience, all of a sudden now I'm working with a lot of like kind of in the independent realm more. And independent film at that time was still independent film. It was like the classic Miramax years of independent film was still we were still riding high off that. So I then was working with a lot of producers who had just wealthy people who had a lot of money, and they wanted to get into the entertainment industry. And I was already exhausted by the studio system. I was then further exhausted by those people. but was successful in it, and then decided my sisters had both, I have two sisters slightly younger than me by about a year and a half each, and they had both moved up to the San Francisco Bay Area. And since I've been a kid, I've always loved San Francisco. I mean, even before I came here, it was just this magical, mystical place. I think it was started with an Alcatraz documentary when I was young, of like some island where there's a prison, and they would always say there's sharks around the island, and it was like, okay. So I
went there on a field trip when I was a kid because I grew up out there. So
yeah,
we went to Alcatraz on a field trip.
I haven't been there yet.
Yeah,
still, believe it or
go,
not.
Man.
My wife was teasing me. She's like, "How have you not been to Alcatraz? This is like part of your story."
We got to shoot a video of us going there and talking. That's dope, man.
Yeah, I've never been there. But like, it's like San Francisco was like kind of always calling me, and I just like the vibes up here. I like the Bay Area vibes, and my sisters had both moved up here, and this was, you know, mid 2000s and getting into the later 2000s, and my sisters had they were like, essentially they're like, there's real jobs up here and like real money. Because even if you wanted to escape the LA film industry thing, LA is still LA. You know, it's like there's kind of so many people there. You were like a dime a dozen, even if you wanted to escape the industry. And so came up to the Bay Area, tried to escape the industry, was trying to do corporate, immediately got a recruiter. He's like, hey, you're specialized in, you know, film and television production. And I was right back doing the same stuff for like startups and stuff like that. The money was more real, but and then I at that time was getting very big into art. Street art was really starting to the Obama election and stuff really kind of blew up the street art movement. There was a lot of momentum behind Obama at that time in 2008. I was very involved with that. And that kind of got me introduced to the whole art community, contemporary art community, the up and coming art community. And then street art was just at its peak. It was starting to peak out at that point. And so, you know, I was obsessed with street art, and it was a movement and it was a time. And so at that time I had started an arts website called Warholian. And Warholian, of course, Andy Warhol, 15 Minutes of Fame, that type of jazz. But I basically created an arts website that was like kind of more like a Vanity Fair, where Vanity Fair was just very clean, presented something that was like gritty and grungy and elevated it, right? And it was becoming elevated at that time.
Yeah.
You know, Shepard Fairey was doing all of his stuff, and
Basquiat was in that. Was he before then? Or
Basquiat's early 80s.
Early 80s.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. But still played huge into influencing this generation of artists. You know, Basquiat, that's the thing. He was well known in the 80s, but he kind of had that resurgence because he was a street artist.
You're right, but it came, like I was saying, it kind of came back around that time with his like you say, resurgence. And
I mean, like that was when we started to, you know, Basquiat, everybody knows him from, you know, some of his gallery works, but they don't know he was a tagger, and he was like out there. So I, you know, then all of a sudden I'm like, I have this arts website. Well, I'm technically I never stopped taking photos or video because I'm an obsessive, you know, capturer of life and energy. So I started creating my, I was the cheapest photographer I could hire. So I was just starting to go out and I was documenting the art scene in San Francisco, namely at galleries like White Walls and Shooting Gallery, owned by a gentleman in San Francisco, and a lot of galleries at that time in San Francisco in the late 2000s. You could go to, on a Friday night, you could go to like 8 gallery openings, 10 gallery openings in a night, and you'd see your friends at different ones, and all the friends are artists, and everybody's hustling. I have to say, most of those artists now are friends of mine still, and they're all moving into museums. You know, my one friend, Casey Gray, I walked into the De Young about a month ago, walking through the main gallery upstairs.
That's in New York, right? Is that in
No, the De Young's out here in San Francisco.
De Young's out here? Okay.
But I turned the corner and his work's on the wall.
Oh, wow.
And it's just like,
it's pretty awesome, huh?
Super crazy to just see. Like, I took a picture immediately and sent it to him. I was like, this is it. But that's you know, it's just, this is another industry where the art, you know, people are in it long enough, and then your friends start getting their goal is to get their works into museums. Their goal at the end of the day is to sell art. It's a hard lift being an artist.
It's very hard. Yeah.
So but I'm always tell people I'm probably going to be best known for documenting street artists at that time. We had a little LA contingent covering down there. Brian Birdman. He goes by Birdman at that time, but Brian Myers was. He was this young guy who was a photographer. I was setting him up on things, and he was going out and shooting things. And he had a young woman who was writing articles. So we were really covering Los Angeles at that time, and then I had some people doing New York. So it became a thing, and that's how like just personally doing photos and videos came back into my life, because then when you have this website now, people are like, hey, can we hire you for things? And I was like, yeah, I need money. So, but I did that for about 4 years, and covered, we had quite a bit of the website was immensely successful. It really blew up when Banksy released Banksy, the famous UK street artist. He had released his documentary Exit Through the Gift Shop. I had a little tip on where some of his pieces might be in San Francisco. And so I was there before a bunch of other taggers had gotten and kind of put their mark on it. And so I've got I think the most clean images of all those works.
Now it's interesting enough. I just learned about Banksy, like who he was. Now, once I found out who he was, I was already seen his art. I wasn't in the world of art. Didn't really, you know what I mean?
But the girl with the balloons been a million.
Yeah, right. You know what I mean? So I was like, oh, that's him. I just didn't know the backstory to it. Yeah. But my coworker, he told me, and then we ended up watching this documentary on, I don't know if it was YouTube, whatever we watched it on. But we actually have the art piece in our barbershop when the guy's throwing the
Palestinian wall.
The Palestinian wall one.
And he's throwing what is a bouquet of flowers.
Yeah, bouquet of flowers. But when I was in what was it, Barcelona, we went to this store, and it was just a Banksy. I don't know if it was Banksy's store, but it was a store that had all his like art, but it was like selling it on socks, selling it on like, wallets, just different things, but it was all his art. So I really after that, I started reading more about him, but I was like, there's a mystery surrounding around him, right?
Yeah. I mean, he's the great unknown street artist. I mean, the thing is, like, I got to know Ben Ein, who is one of his close friends, and a lot of other members who were his crew that helped him put up some of those pieces throughout time. Ben Ein is also another extremely well-known, successful UK street artist. Banksy's quote unquote unknown, but I mean, if you go online and you Google it, or even ask ChatGPT, you can pretty much narrow it down to who he
broke
is.
The code. Yeah.
I mean, there's photos. There's like it's like this. I always, as I think I had mentioned to you, it's before a previous conversation, that I always find it fascinating that, you'll see occasionally the news report of like, who is Banksy? What's behind Banksy? It's like this giant. It's the media like continues to perpetuate this thing,
keep the story alive going, basically.
And he really doesn't put himself out there a lot. He's like all that stuff, he's had all of his stuff like ripped off times 1,000. So much so that I don't know if you saw him do the thing years ago where he sold
this photo and then he shredded it.
Well, there's that.
I saw that. I was like, whoa, he just spent all that money, and then it sold for more.
The Sotheby's auction, where they did that thing where he like shreds. Which
I need to have that kind of money.
But that's genius. Like, and then his other one was the but his work has been so stolen and so put on everything. Like like when you see it on socks, he never was making money from that. But he was like he had done you can go online. He had set up like one of those crappy little vendor booths that's like cheap canvases with all of these Banksy works, like knockoffs of his work. He set it up in New York City off one of the parks, and they were selling his works there, and it was just looked like any knockoff street vendor, but they were actual Banksys. And this like woman, I think, or I can't remember, bought like 2 of them for $10 or something. It's like so, that's what he's great at doing, is like making commentary on like the money of the art world. Like when you get into the art world and how that works, which I've been to at this point in my life, what feels like, oh man, thousands of art. It feels like thousands of art shows. I mean, I actually know quite a bit about the world of contemporary art and art in general. But it's a crazy world, and monetizing in that world is very interesting. And Banksy was the most successful street artist who's come from that world.
It seems like to me, I mean, I don't want to, I'm not interpreting for him, but it kind of seems like to me he almost was like trying to tear down the gatekeeping part of it.
Yeah.
Like,
well, he makes fun of it.
Yeah,
lot.
he makes,
yeah.
right. Like, it's like tongue in cheek towards the gatekeeping behind it.
Yeah.
Like, pay all this money now. I rip it up in front of your face. Or I sell it for $10, but you're going to pay $100,000. But almost like you came from one world that like Hollywood and all that stuff. A lot of gatekeeping. It's right? the same, and so it's the same thing, right? And so that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, he makes really great commentary about it, and I think that's the thing is like you start to, since we live in the Napa Valley, it's very similar to wine. There's a lot of a little bit different these days, just to kind of relate it to wine of like, so like art, what makes something valuable? There's a certain amount of art where like I'm a real big person who loves like, there's the like a real fine detailed painter, somebody who can really they're master of their craft. And I have a lot of dear friends, literally hundreds of artists I know who are all amazing. They paint 12, 14 hours a day. They have their own, like me with photos, taking photos all the time. And they all know me as always having a camera around my neck. They are always painting and always have paint all over their pants. I mean, they're obsessive people. And so but there's different, then I've also watched the art world as well, where this is what Banksy comments on of like, the people with the PR behind them and stuff, and they blow up and they do these shows, and it's like the whole commodity of art and knowing like the big art, like, Jeff Koons, he's famous for his balloon dogs, or he does works, a lot of these bigger artists will do works that literally go right to auction. And so there's a lot of commentary on that of this whole world of like, here you have these artists who like work really fine at their craft, but then there's a huge marketing aspect to art as well.
Right.
And that relates me back to the Napa Valley. There is a certain cost with creating a very expensive Napa Valley cab. Not, historically, especially now, but there's also a huge marketing component to it too,
right.
which has made it $350 a bottle for this, which I think is changing real fast now. And that's changing in Hollywood now too. If I want to harken back on to Hollywood, my experience there, now that which used to be very expensive to do production is getting very affordable. I mean, I always tell people your iPhone is so immensely powerful. It's like one of the most powerful cameras. It's just crazy what an iPhone can do. I mean, if you want to, you can shoot a movie on an iPhone.
So technology has changed that for Hollywood. What's changing it in your understanding for the wine industry? What is changing it?
I think as far as like
what's influencing the change, should I say?
Influencing the change in the wine industry is they did not market to now we're getting into a topic that I'm very passionate about. They have not marketed to the up and coming generation very well. I'm a big social media person. As you know, and I haven't explained on this show, but I ran the official channels for the Napa Valley here for a bit, and really got to know the social media sphere, the largest account in the Napa Valley. And I would play around for 15 years throughout all these websites and consulting and all this other stuff. I've run social media pages over 100,000 now for 15 years. So that's very rare to find someone who's a content creator. I create a ton of content, but also has this understanding of social media and algorithms, and I'm passionate about it too.
Yeah.
And but I think the biggest thing with the wine industry is they have not spoken to the young. You hear this all the time now of like, well, younger people aren't drinking wine. Well, it's, you haven't been talking to them, a lot of the wineries still are very locked into their brand standards of like classic 90s advertising of like, this is a very elegant wine and it's worth $350. And what we're starting to see in the Napa Valley is the baby boomers, who are the last generation who are consuming all this wine and paying for it and really caught up in that whole thing. Well, they're getting older, and I don't want to say dying off, but a lot of them, that's starting to happen. True. That's the truth of life. And a lot of them are just not consuming the wine as much. And then my generation, the mid 2000s, didn't have really the money to consume wine, but I got pulled into it in my 20s as well, because it was like, it's an art. There's an art to wine, and there's an art to everything that the production of it. And I love wine at the end of the day. When I was in my 20s, I really loved wine. I loved the art of it, and I was really passionate about it, just from an appreciation level. But the generations after, they've just kind of been coasting on all that revenue. And then COVID happened, and everybody became an alcoholic for a year and a half.
18 months.
Yeah, I get it.
They either got fatter, got in shape, kicked habits, or created habits. Yeah. And it's like the four, or met someone, or got divorced. Those are all like those. Yeah. That's all that happened in COVID.
Yeah, COVID. It was like, we always, now that we look back, I always like, it was like the snap in Avengers with Thanos, when he snapped in like half of, you just like, what happened to 5 years? It was like, that I think happened to all of us. And, but it was like this, the wine industry. So then they had this huge peak at that time where everybody was drinking, because everybody was depressed, and they, and then for some reason they thought that was going to be that way for the rest of the, it's like a bunch of people making decisions at that time, like, people are drinking more than they've ever drank. We should produce more. And then now you hear these days of like, California's overproduction for grapes, and their overproduction for this, and we have all this wine and no one's really drinking anymore. And so that's, all those factors have led to where it's at. And then they haven't been speaking to the younger consumer. And then, mind you, this is the biggest thing that I think the industry here misses. The cheapest bottle of wine at most wineries,
tell it,
is 30-ish bucks. 30-ish bucks. I can go to Costco right now and pick up a 24 case of Coronas, or Modelo's, and I'll bring up Modelo because I love my Latin beers. But the Modelo, so Constellation Brands, this is new vet news from the Valley. There's this discussion of they're looking at getting rid of their wine portfolio. That's Mondavi. It's all a lot of big names. Huge. Constellation's huge here in the Napa Valley.
Yeah, I've heard of that. Yeah.
Guess what their number one selling alcohol is that they're putting?
Modelo.
So I tell this joke all the time. People are always like, Michael, you get to try, and I do. I'm so fortunate. I get to try all the amazing wines in the Napa Valley all the time. And they're like, what's your favorite bottle? And I'm like, well, I really like a 2025 Modelo or Corona. It's kind of hitting right for me right now. It's like, I just like something that's easy, and I but at the end of the day, I think wine is still like, it's a very natural process. It's still from the earth. It's actually gotten more and more organic here over time. It's still a great product. It's like if we're looking at things just from a product standpoint, it's a great product. It's still like and there is an art to wine, and there's a beauty to wine. And I don't think it's not going away. It's just going to shift.
Yeah, but it's going to have a market correction.
Yeah, it needs a market correction. And then there's, our wines here in Napa are very high in the alcohol content. That's changing. I've had some very, they're low alcohol wines, but they're just more European style wines. But I've also had, recently I had a tequila that was a 25% proof tequila that actually tasted really good. So, I think that's the thing, is like it's just changing. But I bring all that up because the marketing in this industry has been very, they haven't been speaking to a younger consumer. Now all this stuff is hitting the wall, and I think it's really exciting to speak positively about it, because now, from a marketing aspect, now it's time to get time to get like creative.
Your creative juices are starting to flow. I was gonna say, speak to that too as well, to speaking to the younger generation. I don't want to act like I'm an expert at it at all, but I will say that part of the wine selling was the coming to the valley, right?
Right.
And only a certain sector of people can come because it is very expensive
Yeah.
to come,
It's
all the way around, and I understand you have the food with it's the experience. It is an elevated experience,
way elevated.
and you don't want to just say, oh, well, people aren't buying, let's drop our prices to a,
right.
But at the same
they
time,
have rent and everything
yeah,
too.
right,
Business
yeah,
owners.
right, yeah. So,
yeah.
But I think also as well that comes with not just the wine industry, just all industries, with just the cost of living all the way around.
It's crazy.
Like, people are like, okay, well, you have to understand, whatever you're selling, is it a necessity or is it a luxury?
Right.
And wine is a luxury.
It's a
it's
a Birkin bag or it's a Louis Vuitton purse. It's not a necessity.
So at the end of the day, when your house is burning down, your luxuries are what you're thinking about. Hey, I'm grabbing my Social Security, my passport, or my whatever that luxury is. Right. Those are the necessities, right? Yep. You're not going to go into your wine cellar and grab your 1980 bottle of, Bordeaux.
No,
it's to risk your life. And so I think that there's so many different influences. It's not just the mistake on the wine industry alone. It's like there's other things impacting that as well.
Yeah.
Along with them not understanding the shift and the change.
The economy right now is very tough for everybody. I think if you're under the age of 45, listen, the amount of people I know, I live in California, we're in California, but even my friends who live in Chicago or New York, it's hard everywhere. So it's like people go like, here I am, a photographer, videographer, social media marketing guy. You can why don't you move to Chicago? I can get a house for whatever, I can get a house for $300,000, $400,000 there. Yeah, but the amount I make is less too.
Right.
It's all relative.
Right.
So like if you live in LA, it's just a higher cost of living, but you get paid a little bit more generally. But in our generations people don't like to admit this, but I watch a lot of things on the economy and understanding the history of economies more, I should say. Not our economy, but necessarily the history of economies and where America is at. And if you know anything about history and economies, America's just kind of on its downs. There's a rebalancing happening, and also it's unbalanced right now. I mean, we all have less money to spend than for our dollar goes less further than our parents' dollar went.
Right.
And so I'm back. So yeah, it's been quite I feel for everybody right now because there's not a person in any industry that doesn't have some sort of that's not going through some economic pain right now.
Yeah. So what's give us a little bit about the websites that you do run for the Valley, for Napa Valley.
Sure. So I have or
the social media page.
I have a social media page called California's Napa Valley. There's the actual website coming out on that very shortly, californiasnapavalley.com, which basically is elevating the industry here on a kind of a Vanity Fair level as well. It's mostly talking about places I want to talk about. This is, at the end of the day, this is my community, and I try to I want to highlight certain people here that do great things. Now that I know everybody who does all these, I understand how important tourism is for our economy.
Yes.
We are very unique here in the Napa Valley in that we are heavily driven from a hospitality and tourism lens. And it starts with wine, but we also have all these amazing food. And at the end of the day, living in the Napa Valley, as you know, or living in Napa, it's a hustle. Most of the people here are not wealthy.
You're right.
Everybody here lives paycheck to paycheck generally.
True.
Hustles, whether it's the guys working in the vines or it's the guys working in the cellar. It's a very utilitarian industry. So I have a lot of love here. And what I've realized is, I can talk some smack on the wine industry, but at the end of the day, tourism and wine is what feeds those families. And so, we got to keep it going and figure out new ways to promote it and talk about it. So that's what we need to do. And
how long have you been living in the Valley?
Off and on since about 2012.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've been here for a while then.
Yeah. I love the Napa Valley. I always tell people I live here on purpose. As someone who captures the beauty of life, this is one of the most beautiful places in the world. So,
yeah. And with that being said, like what are you, with your relationships and all the work you've done, marketing, like what is your vision? What do you see coming out of this downturn that's happening out here? What do you see with
what's the new Napa Valley?
Yeah, what is it? Because there is a shift happening.
Oh, a major
and there's a
shift.
change happening, right? I think there's a economic change happening. I think there's a social change that's happening.
Big social change happening.
There's
here.
a lot of older, like, not to say dying off, but older kind of going out, and there's new blood, and there's there's all these things happening right now. What do you kind of see this moving to?
The Napa Valley is in a really it's a bad time for a lot of people who are running wineries and running businesses here because it's slowed down, obviously. But that is opening up a lot of opportunity. Things will shift around. At the end of the day, we have we are the Napa Valley. We're one of the most premier destinations in North America to come visit. We have amazing food here. Absolutely amazing. We have an amazingly beautiful valley to just come and visit and spend time in. We have hot springs at the north end of our valley that are very rare on the planet. These amazing Indian springs and Calistoga Spa and hot springs and Solage, and we have these amazing hot spring waters that I really truly feel are so rejuvenating. And there's a lot of things that are not wine that are, the whole tourism industry is moving towards experiences. People want memories, and so I think with that, the wineries are having to shift from their old dynamics of we're just here's the table with the glass. This is the experience, is you just drinking this wine. Well, that's not the experience. So you need more than that now.
Right.
And so now a lot of them have food and wine pairings, which is great. And it's like some of them have full dinners with wine. And I think that's a better way of people, it's creating experiences. So we're here at a really cool time where there's kind of an artistic movement that's starting up here. People like yourself are starting to do things like this. I've been in San Francisco during the energy of like street art and this big art movement that I documented there that doesn't exist anymore. The .com industry came back in and wiped it all out, and nobody could live there. And all my art friends went to LA or there's still a few hanging in there, but it's not the same.
Right.
It just wasn't the same as there's not 8 shows on a Friday night and everybody's gone. It's just not around anymore.
Right.
And, Napa, I feel, is in this place with there being a little bit of a downturn where I think we're going to see more artistry. We're going to see more of that stuff. The great thing about our valley is it is very community oriented.
Yes.
It's the one thing I love about this valley more than anything. I always say this is where the billionaires and the millionaires and the guys working in the fields, everybody has to get to know one another.
Yeah.
There's like 4 roads in and out of this valley. So you're all mixed up together.
You are, yeah.
And you get to know everybody's personality more than you normally would. And I think that's really cool. And I think there's going to be a lot of really cool changes that come out of this industry through this period. And as someone who is running an agency at this time and has decided to move even further into actually creating an agency and providing my creativity to this industry, I think it's a very exciting time for people who do marketing to be really creative and start to present if you run a winery, how do you take wine and how do you create an experience that's going to bring in tourists or bring in young people or bring in a whole new generation of people. And I think we're also getting much more into a local vibes thing where, the Bay Area is the Bay Area, and I have my friends in Oakland who come up here on the weekend, and they Napa's still a special place. When I live in the city, I want to get the hell out of the city and I want to go to Napa. Living in Napa, I want to get the hell out of Napa and go to the city. And I'm happy the city's stabilizing now too, which
I think the new mayor is going to do some good stuff over there.
He's doing great stuff over there.
I think he's going to try to get it back to
he's
glory days, hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, it's I know I have a lot of friends who are business owners there, from the Castro to the Mission to the and they're long-term residents, like people who really, they've been through it all.
Yeah.
And one of them said to me one time, and he's probably in his 80s now, but I said, I'll complain about this. Oh man, the city's really gone to hell. It doesn't look great, and it has. And he's like, oh, this town. He's like, it has such gold rush energy. It's like they come in, it's like this all the time. It goes to hell, and then it's back up, and now it's. And I hear like downtown, what's happening downtown is so the new mayor, they have been cleaning up things quite a bit, because no one wants to see just rampant drug use on the streets.
Yeah.
And listen, as someone who's very comfortable in the Tenderloin, and I love the TL.
Yeah.
It's got a place in my heart.
I'm not gonna ask why.
Street art, honestly.
Okay, street art. Okay, yeah, that's the final answer.
Yeah.
All right, go ahead.
I can't do the drugs they have there now anyway. Yeah, you take the fentanyl down there. You don't get more than 2 steps before you're standing. Yeah, that's part of the problem. Is it's like the drugs have changed too.
Yeah.
As someone who I don't look it, but I have spent a lot of time in the Tenderloin. I've spent a lot of time in some of the tough neighborhoods in Oakland too.
I don't look like what I've been through either.
Yeah, and so it's like I have my street smarts about me, especially me being a tall, stand up, clean cut guy. But I historically have felt very comfortable having street smarts, going through the Tenderloin, taking photos, doing what I need to do, capturing street artists when they're doing their work. Have always felt comfortable. In the past few years, don't feel comfortable down at Pier 39 because
I think that just comes with age, though.
Well, also that, and I have a lot of photographer friends who have also been jacked with it. See, it's like walking around with your
your stuff. Yeah, a lot more. Yeah.
So
it is a lot. It is a lot. It has been a lot crazier.
But it's changed dramatically now. And from what I've heard, we have a relative who's a police officer in the city. He's not an officer. I think he's high up. But we ran into him the other day randomly down in the city, and I said, "How's it going down here?" Is it? And he's like, "It's definitely gotten better. It's like starting to." And he's very no BS. He gives it to us straight. But he said, "Yeah, it's really cleaned up quite a bit, and it's moving it seems to be moving in the right direction." Well, now they have the power to make arrests and do things. And if generally, officers in San Francisco or Oakland or something like that, man, talk about a job. Like those jobs suck in a lot of ways, and you're dealing with just such rampant. What they deal with most of the time is just people who are on hardcore narcotics. And so it's a hard situation to manage because you can't really, it's like you arrest people, but then you can't really keep them, and then they're back on the street.
They're not going to get prosecuted, so then you're really not even arresting them after a while. Like, well, why should I waste my time?
And so it's just been such this cycle there, and And there's more rehabilitation programs that are happening for those individuals, because I also have a compassionate heart for people who are, listen, when you're addicted to that stuff, I've known a lot of people that have gone through hardcore addictions like that. God bless you. It's hard to get out of that stuff. It's nearly impossible. I think that's what people don't realize. If you've never seen people go through that, you have no concept of what it's like to try and get off fentanyl or methamphetamines, or it's impossible. It's nearly impossible. So, I think there's enough shift happening where I just feel like it's heading in a good direction. I just get the vibe of like San Francisco. There's a lot of change going on in our world right now. But with all that change, I think there's always a lot of opportunity.
Cool. Well, man, thank you for coming.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I always ask my guests this question, and if money, you hit the lottery tomorrow, what would Michael be doing?
I'm going to be on a beach somewhere. Drinking a cocktail with some fruit in it, lots of little fruit, piece of the straw, and some other stuff stuck in there. I'm gonna be sitting by the pool, and then I'm gonna just if I had a lot of money,
buying art online.
It's funny.
Buy your best friend's pieces.
It's like you read my wife the other night. We were talking about this. I said my level of success, I think I have decided, is having enough money to where I could support my friends who are artists to do that. So yes, you hit it right on the head. We are having a telepathic moment there. Because what's better than, life is short. Life is all about your relationships. At the end of the day, we're all dead a very short time from now. And so, we're a very money-driven country, and we need money to survive and live. But I would love to have just enough money to support all the amazing creative people I know, from videographers to artists, especially people who paint and draw and stuff like that, and even people who create business. I wish I would love to have enough money to support the creatives I know in my own life. So,
well, I'm gonna pour a drink to that.
Okay,
you take a cheers with me.
that, and I don't know, maybe buy a house.
I didn't say that rich. You gotta be super rich to buy a house in California.
Yeah. Like, maybe buy a house, because I'll be very honest, I'm a renter still, and there's a lot of people I know who should be homeowners, but that's, that stuff's all temporary too. So,
well, cheers.
But hey, to your show, and thanks for having me on, man.
Yes.
Cheers.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Cheers.
you.
And I usually don't do this.
Yeah.
But this is Trishard family wine here.
Yeah.
And just people that I know in the valley, and they really have some good stuff. So I'm shouting them out, giving them a shout out.
and I'll say this too. They knowing the personalities in the valley.
Yeah.
Great people.
They are.
Yeah. Great people, and talk about the biggest supporter of the arts in the Napa Valley. Mm-hmm. So. That's what I do have to say about them. Yeah,
cool.
I appreciate people who have had success and share their success to help grow their community. Yeah. So there you go.
Yeah. Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers to that.
Thank you guys for joining me on another episode. I'll see you next time on Meet Me in Napa.